affected by the recent flash floods which struck the capital Niamey. We have more on that in this story.
It's the beginning of a new life for the survivors of the recent flooding in Niamey. More than 512 heads of family for a population of around 2,500 persons are being accommodated at this site located on the outskirts of the capital. City officials are supervising the operation. We targeted everyone living in the flooded areas and brought them all to this site. Each head of family has the right to occupy one tent. If he has 2 wives, then 2 tents. If he has 3 wives, then 3 tents. Umaru Ide is a flood survivor. He lives on this site with his 2 wives and 10 children. For the time being, he's happy with what he has, but he would like to go back home as soon as possible because living here makes no sense to him. The state has to fulfill its commitments concerning our land, because we left our land and we don't know. They haven't told us anything yet. This is our biggest worry. The main concern in this site has to do with hygiene. A nurse records numerous cases of disease on a daily basis. There is no health care, though, because there are no medical supplies here. We don't have sufficient supplies to do our job well. According to a report issued on the 4th of September by the Prime Minister's office, the floods in Niger took 68 lives, and over 70,000 households were affected by the flooding. That's more than 500,000 people.
Egyptians have voted in the second round of the referendum on a new constitution. Majority of the electorate voted overwhelmingly in favor of changes to the constitution, yet a sizable number of anti-Morsi protesters say the new constitution betrays the revolution which overthrew Hosni Mubarak. We have details in this report.
Egyptians took part in a second round of voting Saturday in a referendum on changes to the constitution. There was a 30% turnout in the first round of the referendum. 57% were in favor of constitutional changes. Critics in Egypt say the changes will favor the Islamists in power and betray the revolution that overthrew President Mubarak. The constitution will not protect women's rights or children's rights, and this concerns me because I work in education. It won't even protect minority rights. Supporters of President Mohamed Morsi, who proposed the changes, are confident. They say the constitution will provide a framework for stable institutions and can always be modified.
Well, I'm going to say yes, because I'm totally convinced that I've read all the articles, not all, over 90% of the articles of the Constitution, and I'm totally convinced that it has some points that I don't agree with totally, but again, they're going to be changed later on in the Parliament.
Egypt is deeply divided. Over the past weeks, there have been constant confrontations between opponents and supporters of President Morsi. Friday, there were clashes in the streets of Alexandria, Egypt's second-largest city. Dozens of people were injured, and there are no guarantees that tensions will subside after the referendum. The lack of communication between different political parties and the one-party rule led to the distrust of parties. The problems in Egypt cannot be solved even if the constitution is perfect. I think in the future the situation will be more complicated. The Islamist-dominated government that has remained in the background until now is trying to appease the tensions. The spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood has called for dialogue between opponents and supporters of President Morsi. The call was backed by Egypt's Mufti, who called for the results of the referendum Monday to be respected.
In Syria, residents of Christian areas in the central part of the country have been asked to help rebels of the Free Syrian Army in their fight against troops loyal to Bashar al-Assad. And riots have continued in Argentina against government moves to reduce the rate of the local currency. At least 2 people died in the latest round of protests in that country. We have details of those stories and others in this CFI News Roundup.
In Syria, rebel fighters are warning inhabitants of the two Christian areas in the region of Hama and the center of the country that they will be launching an attack in order to get rid of members of the pro-Assad forces. The rebels are asking the population to open their doors to members of the Free Syrian Army. The Russian president, who is Damascus's ally, expressed concern over the chaotic situation in Syria. NATO says it has detected fresh Scud-type missile firing by the regime. Riots and supermarket lootings have risen since Thursday in a number of Argentine cities. These images are staunch reminders of the 2001 financial crisis, where 50% of the people ended up living under the breadline. Today, according to a number of analysts, the situation is more political than economic. At least 2 people have died and hundreds have been injured throughout the country. Around 300 people have been arrested. Political unrest began in November in opposition to the potential re-election of the president. Markets were calm after the Republicans' rescue plan, which was meant to stop the country's budget crisis, failed to make it through the Chamber of Representatives. The budget is affected by an increase in taxes for all Americans, and there will also be automatic spending cuts as of the 1st of January. The American president met with the president of the Chamber of Representatives, John Boehner. Barack Obama on Friday called on Congress to adopt a more modest budget so as to avoid compulsory austerity measures at the start of January. Following the resignation of Mario Monti, parliamentary campaigning has officially begun, but it's still uncertain whether he will be one of the candidates. Professor Monti is viewed rather positively by his European peers and the business world. 60% of Italians are said to be against Monti as a candidate. Should he run, he would lose his image of a man of the state above any party.
We're taking another break. We'll be back in a moment.
yii ci jonge épice say marinade dina neex ba yokk sa appétit ak jonge épice jongeel ba sës jongeel ba faw ni jongeel ba ca biir cin.
Start your day with Armonti, pure margarine with the best ingredients. Also ideal for frying and baking. Every day, an Armonti day.
After weeks of thrilling football matches between some of the best teams of the zonal championship, the final game of this hugely exciting community tournament has ended inconclusively amid scenes reminiscent of the 2010 championship final. The two sides, Brikama and Baka, were tied at 2-2 until the Western Region outfit scored a controversial late winner, which sparked a pitch invasion by a fan. As can be seen in this footage, riot police reacted quickly to apprehend the pitch invader, but the melee spread uncontrollably. It is the latest in a series of problems associated with a tournament seen as a benchmark for Gambian football, as fans from all communities have embraced the championship in a manner rarely experienced in Gambian football competitions. We'll continue to monitor news on that developing story. And before we wrap up, a look once again at our headlines. Staff of the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology have validated the Ministry's 2012 activity report. Health experts have conducted a massive exercise to disinfect wells and taps in the Central River region as part of celebrations marking Global Hand Washing Day. Voters in Egypt have endorsed new changes to the constitution, but anti-Morsi elements describe the vote as a betrayal. of the revolution, and clashes have erupted in Argentina over the government's decision to reduce the rate of the local currency. That's all in this edition of the news. Thanks for being there, and do join us at 2200 hours for another newscast. Bye-bye.